Greetings everyone, October is here, and I wanted to share something that I'm really passionate about, and it also will help you get into the Halloween spirit, which I think is crucial. I'm going to talk to you about Edward Gorey, and Edward Gorey was an author and illustrator. He worked on, so many books. He was very prolific, and his artwork is amazing. It's very detailed and exquisite and just beautiful. But what I actually appreciate about him the most is his writing. He had such a range of his writing. He could write children's stories and stories about mundane everyday life, creepy, unsettling stories, mysteries, and like full-on horror, like shaking in your boots when you read it kind of stories. And I'm in awe of that. I think that is incredible. Like good work if you can get it. Let me just say. So here are like what in my opinion, are his spookiest books. First up is The Object Lesson. What jumps out about this book to me is it reminds me of like a widescreen format, the way the book is, like a film, and that's very apropos because the story unfolds very much like a silent film. He was very influenced by silent films and things like that, as am I. That's why I'm Silent James, not because I'm quiet. And this, to me, this book is one of the most perfect marriages of words with imagery that will transport the reader. And what I mean by that is he avoided doing literal literal accompaniment to the images, where he avoided having the text be a literal explanation as to what's in the image. In fact, he was doing the opposite, where sometimes the words didn't have anything to do with the image, but the way he connected them together, it pushed your imagination like so far when you would read it, and it was just such an experience, the two together. There's a part in here towards the end that I'll never forget. I mean, I still have chills when I think about it. This page says, guns began to go off in the distance. And it's just this very simple drawing with that sentence down at the bottom. I mean, when I read that, I was transported there. I can hear the gun sounds going off. I can feel the wind. I feel like I'm there. And that's just one page in this book. I first saw this in a collection of his work called Amphigory. For those of you who don't know, Amphigory is basically a large collection. It's like a graphic novel, more vertical format, where it would collect a lot of his books. The good thing about it was a lot of his books are hard to find. They're very expensive. So you can enjoy, a lot of them in these Amphigory. There's a few different volumes of it. The problem that I have with it is that you lose the experience of the page turn, where it's a surprise when you turn the page what's gonna be next, because they take a bunch of pages and just put them on one page, and so you'll have 4 pages on one page. The other thing is the quality. The printing wasn't always as good, so I like to go to the original books, and I find them like just that much more enjoyable. That being said, there's a bunch that are just too expensive that I could never afford. So the Amphigories are good for that. But this was the first story that I read of his where obviously I liked his work. I was drawn to it, but this was the first one I read where I said, "You are the person, Edward Gorey. I am going to seek out all of your stories and read them." It's just a beautiful, beautiful, haunting story. Next up is something a lot more lighthearted. It's a mystery called The Sopping Thursday. And what I noticed first when I see this is that the cover isn't really a cover. It's actually the first page of the story. There's even dialogue there, which I think is a very innovative way to have a book. I mean, That to me is brilliant. The other thing I noticed is that his art style in this is very different. It's he has silhouettes throughout the book, but then also these very thin lines for the rest of the drawings. And it almost looks like silver point, the way how delicate the lines are. Reminds me of silver point. So this is a mystery with a bunch of different narratives going on at once, different storylines going on at once. The main character looks like a Labrador, so I love it already. I love dogs. Even the way he does the word balloons, it's like a ribbon, and it's also see-through. Like you can see the rain through it. He was doing so many unique things with this book. It's just really fun, really funny. There's the one page that I always remember was this one where the guy is yelling, "None of these umbrellas will do," with his fists in the air, and the woman is just hiding away in torment. Like, it's just so funny. So yeah, this is it's raining throughout the whole story. This is a very October book to me. I think anybody would love this. It's really good, and it's a pretty big book too. The format, so it's very nice. Okay, so this one, The Gilded Bat. This is in my opinion, one of his best drawn. During this time, this came out in 1966. He had really fine-tuned his art style, the cross-hatching. Every page in this book is a masterpiece. The story is about a ballerina who, it's like her rise to fame from when she was a child to when she joined the ballet troupe to when she became like a solo, famous solo performer. What strikes me most interesting about this, and it's this is one of the most powerful stories I've ever read, is it really is a perfect example. It's like a window into what it is to be an artist that has to dedicate so much time to their craft, like so many hours alone doing repetitive tasks, just so that they can accomplish what their imagination is trying to achieve. The parts of it, I mean, being an artist myself, and having lived a life where I have spent a lot of time on my own, practicing and fine-tuning and things like that. There's just so many powerful moments that like. I hate the phrase, but resonated with me. And so you see throughout there's many pages where she is practicing in the mirror and looking at herself, and they show her at different ages, like 3 different ages. And it's like, no matter what is happening in her life, no matter how famous she's getting, no matter how many awards she's getting, her life is exactly the same. And it's very bleak, and it's very unsettling, it's very lonely, it's very sad. This page is to me one of the most powerful. It says her life was really no different from what it had ever been, and she's older and she's just looking in the window, doing the same thing she's been doing since she was a kid. Really powerful book. It's a very beautiful story, very unsettling. Death Salon this year was in Boston, and they had an Edward Gorey themed cocktail reception, and Courtney Lane, who does the great Victorian hair work and things like that, she dressed up as the Gilded Bat, so shout out to her, because I saw the photos. I mean, I wish I could have seen it in person, but that was a wonderful outfit. Like, all the outfits were really cool, but that was something else. Next up is a book that came out a few years later, but it's in the same vein as the Gilded Bat, the Blue A Speck. And this is a story about an opera singer, her rise to fame, but this is more focused on an obsessed fan of hers. And it explores the theme of toxic fandom that, this came out in 1968. before the internet, before, you know, YouTube stars and Instagram, and, you know, but it's very striking how, like, important this is to today's day and age, because, you know, today people wake up and they're greeted by, you know, a YouTube video from some idol that they like. Then they follow them all day on Instagram throughout their day. And then sometimes they're greeted by a video before they go to bed. So it's like you're spending all this time, you know, spending time with these people you don't know, that don't know you, but you feel like you know them. You feel like they're part of your family, and you end up spending more time listening to them, watching them, paying attention to them than people that are actually in your life. And people can lose sense of reality sometimes, where you think that they're in your life, and then, you know, that's when these things can happen, when you can, like, have toxic relationships with your idols, or with your fans, or things like that. And so this story, yeah, is about, as she's rising to fame, her fan is just spiraling worse and worse and worse mentally, and is, you know, stalking her and things like that. This is a very scary story, very creepy, really, really well drawn. Like, again, just like Gilded Bat, this is like perfection, like every page. A very sad story, and very appropriate to today's, you know, today's day and age, with, like, idolization and things like that. So this is very, very highly recommended. We're getting deeper and deeper into the horror. Okay, and this one is his most to me is one of his most depressing and frightening. The Lonesome Couple. This is about. It was inspired. Edward Gorey said he made this because he was so shocked and sad about the murders that were going on at this time in the late 70s. Where people were being murdered and no one was finding out about it until, like, you know, a few years later. And, like, he just thought that was so scary, that, like, these kind of awful events can happen. People can just disappear, and people, you know, lives just go on, and sometimes no one even notices. So this is a story about two people that meet, a man and a woman, and they call it their life's work, or what, they embark on their life's work. But it's basically they want to murder somebody, and it just shows, yeah, it's very scary, really well drawn. And the thing that I remember about this is that I've seen a lot of his work in person at different gallery shows, and I went to one in Boston. I think it was called Gory Worlds, but I can't remember. And one piece I remember seeing in person was this image. They would, this is them going to the movie theater and seeing a crime film, but the way that the projected film is illustrated with all horizontal lines, it really, again, you know, against the contrast of, like, the way that the foreground is illustrated, it really gives the image, it really gives the effect of watching a film, a projected film. And I was seeing it in person, this, like, will bring you to tears. It's, like, so well done. Just really cool to see this in person. But anyway, this is scary, but really well drawn, and, you know, good for a scare. I want to show this because this is so cool, The Dwindling Party. This is a pop-up book that he did, and I have never seen a pop-up book that was this, you know, just this cool. Like, there's lots of things you can pull and, like, twist and things. The story is spooky too, but just having these things pop up, I mean, they're so exquisite. Like, Sorry if it goes out of focus like that, but I'll try to keep it in focus. Just like so well done, and this is really, really cool, really fun, and you can basically, it feels like you're exploring throughout the sets and things like that. So yeah, Halloween Dwindling Party. Last but not least, I hate that saying. I don't know why every single person that says last, that's the first word they say, last, they always follow it up with but not least. But anyway, the Curious Sofa. It was the first Edward Gorey book I ever saw in my life. It's my most favorite of all his works, and I'll tell you really quick the story. It's very, very odd. I saw this book for the first time in Japan, of all places. I was at a museum that had a Russian children's book gallery show, and in the bookstore, in like just thrown together with a bunch of other books, was this book. And I picked it up and I started looking at it, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like a pocket silent film. And when you read the first page, you are compelled to read it to the end. I mean, it's very gripping, very... you don't know what you really don't know what you're reading with this. Now, on the cover, what's interesting is it says, a pornographic work. The reason that I find that very striking, very strange that is on the cover. I mean, that would dissuade people, I feel like, but it's very apropos because it says it's a pornographic work. So when you read it, when you read this story, you don't know what's going on. You don't know. You could look at it two ways. One is that this is just an innocent story about a woman that likes to eat grapes, and she keeps going to different parties and meeting new people, and then just something weird happens at the end that is not explained. Or, you know, when you read a pornographic work on the front, you could look at this like, there is a lot of sex going on in this book. Every page, it's like innuendos for sex. So it's so brilliant the way, I mean, this must have been painstaking, like, to fine-tune every single page, every word written in it, to keep the reader guessing on what they're actually, like, what is really going on. It's a really great mystery. Really, it's funny, it's weird, it's scary. This to me is one of the most brilliant works of all time. The other thing is, it says by Ogdred Weary, and that is he would occasionally use anagrams for his names, and Ogdred Weary was one that he would use. He used a few times actually, which is again it's really weird, really cool. There's just so much about this one book. And then the end is very spooky and weird and strange. And yeah, so this was the first one I saw. It's still my favorite. And for Halloween, this is absolutely perfect.